Embarrassment. And it's about as disrespectful as any athlete has ever been. The NFL football field is not a place for somebody to further their political ambitions. Put on that blue police uniform and put the shield on and see what it's like to put your life in harm's way every single day. And then get back to me when you're making $35,000 or $40,000 a year as opposed to $11 million that he's making. Stephen A., did Boomer cross the line with those comments?
Yes, he did. He absolutely crossed the line. And I want to preface my comments by saying that I don't know Boomer Esiason personally. I've met him on several occasions. I think he's a really good man. He's a fabulous analyst, both on radio and on television. He's a good person. He's a good guy. I am not casting any aspersions on him in terms of his character. I'm only speaking about Boomer Esiason as it specifically pertains to these quotes about Colin Kaepernick. He crossed the line. And the reason why I believe Boomer Esiason crossed the line, and I really, really wish this was one of those days where he wasn't working for CBS and I was working for ESPN, because I would gladly show up on his radio show to tell him why I think he crossed the line. It's one of those situations where Boomer Esiason, I hate to sit up there and say it to you, but you'd have to be black to understand. Because not being a black man, being as white as you are, to say the statement that you said just comes across as something incredibly insensitive to what it's like to be a black man in America. There's just no other way to slice it. I am quite certain he didn't mean it that way. Knowing his character, what he stands for, and who he is, I don't think Boomer Esiason meant it that way. But to a black person, it can come across no other way as far as I'm concerned. First of all, let's narrow this down and let's talk about this for a second here. If it was so egregious, then why doesn't the NFL mandate that you must stand for the national anthem the way the National Basketball Association does so? The NFL specifically states it encourages it, but at the same time, it doesn't mandate it. Why? Because it's within your right to stand or to sit. It involves your First Amendment privileges under the United States Constitution. That's point number one. But I really took issue with what he said in bringing up the police officers. Now, Max Kellerman, Molly Kiram, how many times have I been on these airwaves literally addressing the issue of police brutality against the African-American community? I specifically state that over 95% of the police officers that swear to protect, or that have sworn to protect and serve our nation, do exactly that. They deserve to be commended. They deserve to be celebrated and respected to the highest order. We're not talking about police officers. We're talking about the few rogue ones who engage in insidious behavior. That's who we're talking about here. So if we understand that, that's one of the reasons I religiously say it's not police brutality. It's brutality on the part of some police officers by members of the African-American community. But this is something that is not new. It went on in Cincinnati in the 60s. It went on in various cities decades before that, decades after that. This stuff, as it pertains to black folks and the police officers of this nation, it's not a new issue. It's something that's been going on for decades upon decades. I totally understand why Boomer Esiason wouldn't know much about it or be sensitive enough to it, because if you are a white individual that is not subjected to some of the insidious things that take place against the African-American community, of course you wouldn't know. That's not something for Boomer Esiason to be criticized over. But to sit up there and so flippantly throw it out there, if there's no argument, there's no validity whatsoever to anything that Colin Kaepernick echoed, I think reeks of a heightened level of insensitivity that, to be quite honest with you, I'm very shocked that Boomer Esiason articulated. And that's really what I wanted to say about this. Boomer Esiason is one of those conscientious individuals, incredibly intelligent, very well informed for the most part, it seems on many occasions, certainly knows his football, does an exceptional job at WFAN in New York, does an exceptional job on CBS, and personally with this foundation, he does God's work as far as I'm concerned. He's a wonderful, wonderful person by all accounts. But in this particular instance, he really would have to be black to understand, and more importantly, he would need to be black to really make the kind of statement that he made. But to go in a different direction the way that he did, it just showed either a level of insensitivity that I was shocked to hear coming out of his mouth, or just complete ignorance as to what black folks have been going through in the United States of America. And it's really unfortunate that he took that position, and I just feel compelled to say that.
You don't have to be black to understand. I understand. I mean, this is not that difficult to understand. I don't think he crossed any line unless, you know, the anti-intellectual line. There's a strong culture in the jock culture of anti-intellectualism. Essentially, when things get too complex to think about, you shut down your brain and just go with your emotion. Let's take his comments one at a time. The NFL football field is not a place for somebody to further their political ambitions. Apparently, it is a place, according to Boomer Esiason, for compulsory and therefore meaningless displays of patriotism. If you are forced to show how patriotic you are by standing for the national anthem, it becomes meaningless. If you're forced to do it, it's just a display. There's nothing driving it other than the fact that you have to do it. You're not allowed not to, which is not the case in the NFL. And he seems to struggle, Boomer Esiason, with the difference between an active political statement, like wearing a political hat or staging a march. It's not like Kaepernick is staging a march on the field. He stated very clearly his conscience won't let him stand for the national anthem because he feels in various respects this country's not living up to its ideals. Do you know where you are? So he's just refusing to participate in something that is in fact not compulsory. Do you know where you're forced to participate in that kind of thing? North Korea. You know why? Because they have a communist dictator, which is why many of us who stand up for the national anthem and think great things when they see the flag are happy, and people who want to tie this to the military are happy that the military serves and protects, because we are not forced to do this type of thing. By the way, how many of, like, we don't sing the national or stand for the national anthem before the movies. That's a public gathering. I can think of very few things more American than, like, you know, if you make a purchase at a store, right, the heart of capitalism, do you stand for the national anthem? Well, I mean, the military serves and protects and helps us do that too, don't they? That's our way of life. And do we stand for the national anthem every time? But somehow this is interwoven. It's connected to our sports culture in such a way that people can't get past it. Now let's talk about the other comment. Put on that blue police uniform and put the shield on and see what it's like to put your life in harm's way. Yes, Boomer Esiason. The police have a dangerous and difficult job. You'd have to be an idiot not to recognize that. Police have a dangerous and difficult job. That does not mean that there aren't also inequities that persist in various forms in American life, including in law enforcement, that have yet to be remedied. I don't see what one thing has to do with the other. As usual, by the way, you know who comes off as the adult in the room of everyone who's made comments on this? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. As usual, a couple days go by, a week goes by after a political controversy, and Kareem weighs in and you go, yup, that's the adult in the room. He said, the most un-American thing about this is the persistence of the problem. The point that Kaepernick is making, the fact that that persists, inequities in our system, is un-American. And Stephen A. Smith, he's 100% right. Part of what is uniquely American is American exceptionalism, which I believe in. It could be said, above all things, to be our optimism. We believe there's a solution to every problem. Not every country around the world, in terms of their culture, really symbolizes that and acts on that the way America does. And frequently, the way we achieve it, the way we achieve change, is through protest. This is an especially American thing, and therefore patriotic thing that Kaepernick is doing.
Well, I appreciate your sentiments, Max, and all of us can learn from it. But I'm zeroing in on Boomer Esiason. That's where my focus is. That's why we're leading this show. And when I think about what he said, let's dissect it. You dissect it in your way, let's dissect it in my way. He says, quote, he signed a contract with an NFL team. He has on an NFL helmet. He's got an NFL uniform on. He doesn't have the right, I don't believe. Well, Boomer Esiason, it doesn't matter what you believe because you're flat out wrong. He actually does have the right. NFL laws, bylaws state as much, as well as our United States Constitution. So you're flat out wrong, factually. That is factually incorrect. That's point number one. But we go a step further. and he said, I would tell him before you open your mouth, maybe you should take a ride in a police car on a Friday or Saturday night in one of these major urban cities in America. Just go on a couple of 911 calls. Maybe then you can get an idea of what these people making $35,000 a year have to deal with. Boomer Esiason, I'd like to ask the question, how would you know? How would you know that? Because maybe you've taken a ride with police officers during those 911 calls. It would have been nice that you said so. Maybe he has not. I don't know. But I do know this. There are a lot of folks in America who happen to be black that when the police come, even when it's a 911 call made by those within their community, they get very nervous because they don't know how the police are going to react. I'm going to remind Boomer Esiason, while unarmed black men were killed by some police officers who happened to go rogue, there was also a white individual in South Carolina that gunned down 9 folks. And when he was arrested, they took him for a Burger King. There was an Uber driver in Michigan that gunned down 6 people, and he was arrested. People are getting arrested who happen not to be black. People who are black happen to be dying. And these are the kind of things that Boomer Esiason, to me, should know. I believe he does know. Now, I do want to emphasize this. He does have the right to feel the way that he feels. But let's just be open and plain about it. You may not have to announce that you're white, but it's clear that you're very white in this regard because you seem to have no understanding or an absence, a flagrant absence of sensitivity to what black folks go through. I am very, very successful. God has blessed me tremendously. The car that I drive, the home that I have, the bank account that I have at my disposal, it didn't stop me from getting pulled over on Columbus Avenue just a few months ago with 8 cops surrounding my car. And thank God one of the cops recognized me being from ESPN because I'm Stephen A. of ESPN. Because before that, there was an officer that was cussing at me because I asked a question. What did I do? And that one question prompted him to literally put his hand on his gun and tell me to shut the F up before the officer grabbed him and said, whoa, do you know who that is? And I put both of my hands on my steering wheel. I rolled down all 4 of my windows. These are the kind of things that happen. And so it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter whether you have affluence or you're mired in poverty. It just seems that when your pigmentation is darker than white folks, that you tend to have trouble from time to time significantly more than others. Now, I can't speak for white folks and what they go through. Maybe their problems are the same. It doesn't appear to be that way. So when Boomer Esiason makes a quote like that, I wish he would inform me a little bit more about where that comes from, because just blanketly stating what he states comes across as him being far less than the great, great man I know him to be.
There are 2 issues here. I understand what you're saying. There's the racial sensitivity issue, but there's also the anti-intellectual component of what he said. And this is an ongoing situation in sports, especially among many of the former athletes. But you do see there are intellectuals among former athletes like Kareem, and that's the reason I brought up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Because Boomer here is being stridently intellectual. In other words, I feel a certain way about it, so my cerebral cortex is going to shut down, and I'm going to get very emotional about it. Whereas Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and this may also be related, obviously, to racial sensitivity, is actually thinking it through. So while I get the racial insensitivity point, what struck me was the lack of thought process. Behind what he's saying, behind what Boomer's saying.
Well,
it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense.
But that's what struck you. What struck me is that the way Boomer Esiason came across is exactly and precisely the kind of attitude black folks in America are lamenting about what